4.9 billion people use social media worldwide.
I mean, listen, there's pros and cons, right?
How do you stop it from just becoming an echo chamber? We post on social media certain things to try and seem cool.
Welcome to the Manhood Understood podcast.
What's going on, son?
Nothing much, same old, same old. Yankees lost a big game last night, but still decided to come on and represent the Yankees, so show my loyalty a little bit.
You're not a fair weather fan?
No, even though I'm not much of a baseball fan, but I still got a team.
Yeah, I couldn't even tell you who plays for the Yankees anymore. How's your week been?
It's been good. Nothing, anything crazy is going on. Just like I said, same old, same old. How about you?
Good. Same, man. Not much. Living the retired life, getting ready to start wrestling season. The official season starts tomorrow, so that's exciting. What are we going to talk about
you want
today?
to get us started on our discussion of social media and what role it plays in today's society?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, I'm wondering, what was the first social media site you were ever on?
I don't know if this is correct, but I believe it was Instagram. And I think the rule was that we weren't allowed to have any social media until sixth grade. So at sixth grade, I made an Instagram account, and I believe that was my first interaction with social media.
I mean, I think if we're being honest, you probably had a Snapchat account when you weren't supposed to.
I mean, I did have a Snapchat account when I wasn't supposed to, but I don't think Snapchat was as what it was then.
Gotcha.
Until high school it really started to become a thing.
Yeah, I don't know. I couldn't tell you what my first. I would guess it was Facebook.
No MySpace?
No, I definitely didn't have MySpace. That I remember when everybody had a MySpace, but I didn't have any MySpace. It was, like I said, I think probably the first time was first social media platform that I got on was Facebook. How do you? Go ahead.
I was just gonna say my question is has there been any major changes from just because I'm pretty sure when you made a Facebook, it was probably the only thing around. Is there any major differences or one big difference from when Facebook first became a thing to all the social media that we have now?
I mean, I just think it's more prevailing in our society today, right? I think social media is just part of our life. I've been on and off of it for years, and just recently, because this podcast got back on Facebook and Instagram, but I think you'd be hard pressed to find anybody this day and age that doesn't use social media to some extent, right? Back when Facebook started, I would say that there was still a lot of people not on it. The first time I was on Facebook.
To your point, 4.9 billion people use social media today with over an average of 2.5 hours a day.
That's crazy. I mean, and I don't say this with any judgment, right? Because, as you know, I have a flip phone now, and I didn't always have a flip phone. I had a smartphone, and one of the reasons I got rid of the smartphone was the access to social media was just too readily available, and it was a complete time suck for me. And I just wonder if we're using those 4.9, what do you say, billion or million?
Billion.
Those 4.9 billion people could be doing something more productive with their lives for those 2.5 hours a day.
Yeah, well, I think social media has just kind of become a part of everybody's life without any type of regulation to it. They just kind of go on there and they doom scroll and go down all these rabbit holes and it's not even, sometimes you're on there to learn something or get value, but a lot of times you're just on there to kill time or to distract you from being bored.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's pros and cons, right? And I don't think social media is inherently good or bad, right? It's just a tool. It's just, it's like a knife. Is a knife good or bad? And no, it could be used for bad. It could be used for good. It all depends on how you use it and how intentional you are with it. But I think And again, I was guilty of this. When you're not intentional with it, it's more has more negative consequences than it does positive.
Yeah, I think it's like anything else where it comes with its positives and negatives. And I also think people are starting to realize more of those negatives. And before we came on, I was just kind of thinking about what we can relate this to. And I don't know why, but I thought about cigarettes and how when cigarettes first came out, everybody was using them, everybody was smoking them, even like young kids. And then as time progressed, people started to see some of the negative side effects of it, and it kind of took a step back, and people stopped smoking it, and kids aren't allowed to get their hands on them anymore. So I think we're kind of in that stage with social media as well, maybe a little bit early on of we had this thing come out that was revolutionary. It was a lot of fun, and now it's kind of as it's getting older and older, people are starting to see the negatives and kind of pulling back from it.
Yeah, I mean, I think whenever anything's new, right, everybody wants to jump on it, and um, takes time to see the negative consequences of it. I think with like the comparison to cigarettes, I wonder if I think the tobacco companies knew from day one that cigarettes were bad from you, or early on that cigarettes were bad for you, right? But they made money. So I wonder if some of the people who created social media, and I do think whether this was the intention or not, I do think people use it, um, the addictive nature of social media to their advantage.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I can only imagine Mark Zuckerberg, when he started Facebook, he knew people were going to get addicted to this, and it's probably part of the reason on why he wanted to make it, because he knew it would catch on for people.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, right? He was I don't know much of the story, but college student at the time, and uh, that my understanding of it is he created it as a way to for other students to connect, and probably for a way for him and his buddies to meet girls. But when he realized that it took off and that it had the that it had a addictive nature and that he could monetize it, then I'm sure he may or may not. Well, maybe he did take advantage of it.
Yeah, for sure. Just to hit on the negative, since we're kind of already on the topic, do you think people kind of get into this trap of comparison where they see people online, right? Where they're posting about their relationships, they're posting about their financial success or anything like that. I think it's pretty well known that people don't really show the negative sides of their life on social media. They only show the good, or they only make it so that you perceive maybe that they're more successful than they are. And how do you think people fall into that comparison trap?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very curated, right? It's their social media life compared to their real life, and um, we and I use the collective we can create any image we want on social media, and that could be good if you're doing it for a business, or well, you want it to be genuine. But yeah, I think it like I said, curate. It's a very curated life that these people create, and I think other people look at that and see that and feel less than, maybe because in their lives they're not experiencing those things. But the reality is well, no matter how well we're doing and no matter what we put on social media, we all have struggles. We all have areas of our lives that aren't going great, or days that aren't great. And I think the important thing is especially for people of your generation and young men, is to understand that that is just a curated life. And it's not necessarily even to say that everybody that puts stuff on social media is making stuff up, but they're only sharing the good stuff. I think if you're using, if you're trying to create a social media image, or an image, I think, the best bet is to show some of the bad stuff too, right? So people can relate. Um, but to your point, I do think that people fall into that comparison trap, and it's one of the negatives of social media for sure.
I think a perfect example of what we're talking about, and what I kind of go to immediately, is a lot of these guys come on social media and they're posting pictures of them in the gym or videos of them in the gym. and maybe they're not necessarily natural, but they're coming off to their audience as being natural, right? So now there's a whole bunch of people watching through the phone thinking, man, I want to be like this guy. He says he's natural, so you think he's natural. So now you have that image in your head of that you're never going to attain this, but why can this guy do it naturally, but I can't? Or on the other side of it, there's people who are claiming not to be natty and they're saying they're using these things, and now people think, well, the only way I can obtain that is if I do these things, and either they give up on their goal of what they want to accomplish, or they find a way to start taking drugs so that they can start looking like these guys.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't think you should have your phone in the gym with you and be taking pictures when you're working out, right? When you're training. So, but yeah, I do think again, it sets people up for failure, and I can always appreciate, and I'm not on social media like I used to be, but there was always a few guys who would be very upfront with how they got the results they got, and those are the guys that I don't know, I wanted to follow, but that seemed more genuine, and the guys that you look at and you're like, I don't know about that guy, and he's swearing up, and I mean, look at the dare I say the Liver King, um, the big controversy with him, right? And the reality is he's just a guy who wanted the same things we all want, right? We want to look good with our shirt off. Um, and he portrayed it as something that he portrayed himself as something that he wasn't, and he created a lot of controversy in his life. So, not sure he used social media in a positive way.
Yeah, I think you can almost have more respect, because I think the reason people claim that they're not using, or they're natty, is because they want to have respect, or they want to, whatever it may be. But you could almost have more respect for the guy that could come out and say, hey, this is all me. I've had some help along the way.
For sure, for sure.
Another thing, keeping on the topic of the gym, I don't know how much you get into any public gyms, but I feel like anytime I've been in a public gym, you see probably 99% of the people in the gym, either one just completely distracted by their phone, or two, between every single rep or set, they're scrolling on social media. So it kind of, defeats the purpose of, not defeats the purpose of going to the gym, but can you really get a good workout in when you're distracted yourself every 30 seconds?
Yeah, I think more than getting a good workout in, because maybe if they're putting in the work during this in the sets, and then but the bottom line is you're not present, right? And the more present you can be in life, the better off you're going to be, whether it's in the gym, at work, at home, with your family, right? This ability for social media to distract us is taking away from us experiencing life, right? And this goes to that social media kind of image that people create, and some people are living vicariously through these characters, for lack of a better term, on social media, right? Instead of going out and living their own lives and creating things in their own lives, they're living vicariously through these social media personalities.
Yeah, I think that ties in perfectly to my next negative, is that men confuse online connection or digital interaction for real connection. And they kind of, instead of going out and having a real world connection, it's kind of just live through social media.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I there's value in online men's groups, and even through social media, right? But the real value is shoulder to shoulder, nose to nose, toes to toes. At the risk of sounding like a broken record, we have our online men's brother, our online brotherhood, the Iron Council, and there's a lot of interaction through. Listen, the reality is, and it's a type of social media platform, but there's there's a lot of online connection, but we make sure that we are regularly meeting in person. We have regional channels where we set up regional meetups. The guys in this area, this kind of tri-state area, we meet up at Delaware Water Gap a lot, and So I think again, it's a tool, and it can be used for good, and you can make connections. Here's the reality, right? We have this platform, the internet, where we can meet people from all over the world, right? I have friends in Australia, I have friends in Europe, I have friends in Canada because of the internet. But if all I have is these internet friends, for lack of a better term, the connection isn't as deep. There's still a shallow connection there, right? And when you use that to make the connections, but then meet these people in person, like a great example is, I had a meetup with one of my battle teams in the Iron Council, and we had a guy from Australia on that team, and he made the trip from Australia to South Carolina for the meetup. I mean, that was super impactful, right? So now I have this guy who I knew online. He was from Australia. I was exposed to stuff from a culture standpoint that I had never been exposed to before, right? And then got to meet him in person. And what's that? It's, I don't even know what it is. If it's a meat, if it's like a jelly. The Australian. They say it in a Men at Work song. Vitamin sandwich. I don't remember what it is, but he brought some and I got to taste it, right? So again, I tell that story as those connections you build online, although could be shallow, right? And if all you do is build connections online, like sit in your house and connect online, you're probably not going to be living a fulfilled life. But you can also use it for good by making those connections, networking, and then having the meetups in person.
Yeah, I'm curious, and almost to prove your point, I want to know. So you meet up with your battle team, and how did that in-person meeting affect your guys' relationship when you went back to your meetings over Zoom?
Oh, it's a stronger relationship, right? I mean, we got this whenever you get to sit down and break bread and train with somebody, anytime we get together, whether it's an event, an Order of Man event, or one of these meetups, we're getting some training in, we're sweating together, we're doing hard things together. So it just strengthens those bonds, right? And again, if all you have is those social media or online friendships, you're never going to experience those bonds. But you got to have the in-person stuff to strengthen them.
Yeah, so we're hitting on this positive of being able to have a brotherhood, a community. But one of the things I'm curious to know, and I think you'll have a good answer for this, is because you could see it, and it's very easy for this to happen. Is how do you, I guess, not necessarily stop it, but how do you, for lack of a word, how do you stop it from just becoming an echo chamber or just a whole bunch of guys coming together they can never disagree? Because I think that's a lot of people out there that not necessarily have problems, but have doubts about these types of communities and groups, is that they think it's just kind of an echo chamber.
Yeah, it can become an echo chamber, right? But the reality is we're getting thousands of men from different areas of the world with different cultures, with different perspectives on life. And I think, that and the conversations we're having, right, add to it not being an echo chamber. One of the great things about, if you use these social media and these platforms and these communities intentionally, is you're having open conversations and debates, and healthy conversations and debates, and talking about your differences. So the word of the day, I think, is intentional, whether it's what we're talking about now and not having it be an echo chamber, but you certainly can, right? Social media, like, get back to the topic, and outside of just the Iron Council or similar communities, is social media can 100%, and this is a con, be an echo chamber, right? Because it's curated and there's algorithms. So the more videos you listen to, if you're a conservative and you're listening or watching conservative videos and liking and following conservative, you're going to get more of that, right? And I think the one way to avoid that, not that you obviously you're going to follow and enjoy videos and personalities that align with your views, but I always think you should kind of keep an eye on the other side, right? If for no other reason, just to hear what they're saying. It's always good to know what the other side is arguing. How can you truly form a strong opinion if all you do is surround yourself with other people with the same opinion, right? I in my life, I want people who are going to challenge my opinions, challenge my thoughts, and I keep an open mind, and I'm not married to any opinion. And when I listen to somebody or talk to somebody or watch a video online, social media video, um, that of somebody who has an opposing view to me, it's going to do one of two things. It's either going to strengthen my opinion or it's going to make me question my opinion and maybe change my mind. But I think we have to be open to that. Um, so if we're not open to it and all we're looking for is the echo chamber, then again, it's going to be negative. But the positive part of that is I can be exposed to a whole group of people with an opposing view.
Yeah, I think that ties perfectly into my next positive of access to knowledge, right? You can, before social media, right? The only thing you had to rely on was books or word of mouth or mentors. But now you can go online and you can learn anything instantly. I think a perfect example of that is when I changed the head gasket on the Tahoe. I know we talked about it a little bit on the first episode, right? But I would have never even knew one bolt to take off of that car without going online and being able to watch this video that takes you step by step into how to change a head gasket. So without the internet, I would have never been able to do something like that. So to your point, social media allows us this great access to pretty much anything you want to know.
Yeah, yeah, but and I don't disagree, but it could also be a negative, right? Both sides. There's two sides to all of these, two sides of both, the coin for all of these. Because one of the reasons I got rid of the smartphone was because walking around with that mini little computer in my pocket, any thought that popped into my head, I could just pull it out and look it up, which, you might say, oh, that's a good thing, but it's also a huge distraction, right? So my kind of thought was, well, if it's important, I'll remember to, because listen, I haven't sworn away all electronics and social media and the internet. But if it's important, when I get home or get in front of a computer, I can look it up then. I think that's a great thing that we have, a great resource for us, is to be able to do things like learn how to change a head gasket. Really anything, right? We can look up just anything online and find a YouTube video, and I think that's amazing. But we can also let it distract us, right? I think sometimes we kid ourselves, just like if we read 100 books a year but take no action, what's the point? But if all we do is watch YouTube videos and are learning how to do all these different things but don't take any action, right? That's great if you if you watched all those videos, looked it up, said, I might want to change the head gasket on my 1998 Tahoe, and watched videos but never took any action, then it's useless, right? But you paired it with action, and you were intentional with how you used the internet and social media and YouTube, and that's when it becomes a positive.
Yeah, tying into what you were talking about a little bit earlier, and one of my negatives is that instant gratification, right? Because you can, like you said, to your point, you could pull your phone out at any time and you get answers to anything that you want, right? And you get them fast, and you're watching the Instagram reels, the TikToks, the YouTube shorts. So you get the answers in 15 seconds. So now anything that takes longer than 15 seconds, you don't even want to bother with. So it makes you almost addicted to that instant gratification, and it almost makes you rely on it, right? Because I mean, I'm sure I've caught myself doing this, of going and looking something up that I know the answer to, but I'm just so used to pulling my phone out and trying to come up with the answer through my phone. And instead of actually working for something and having patience for something, I want to get the instant gratification, and it's done for me. I don't have to do any other work.
Yeah, I think there's two things there, right? There's the instant gratification, and it's a negative, right? Because that's what we want. Everything we want now, now, now. And listen, that's not just social media, right? Like the you could get a meal in 2 minutes in the microwave, and so and some of those things are convenient, right? And they were created out of convenience, but I think that's a negative, and I think that's your generation is probably affected by it more than my generation. But I think as a society as a whole, like we want it and we want it now, and that's a negative consequence. I had another point, but I forget what it was.
I want to make one point that I wanted to make, and it's a little bit of a shift in the conversation, but it goes back to what we were talking about uh, with young men having a false understanding of what it means to be a man, and social media plays a big role in that. And I think if we include you had mentioned this, if we include television, right, and all these other things as part of social media, right, is now you have those TV shows where it's falsely portraying manhood and masculinity, as well as all these guys online posting about all the false masculinity stuff and not setting the proper example for people. So I think it's that social media directly plays a role into one of the problems that young men face today.
Yeah, for sure, and probably two different influences there, right? I think when you talk about TV sitcoms in this day and age, and maybe for a long time have portrayed the man as like a buffoon, like he's kind of like the comic relief in the show, and not truly leading. Um, so that's one side of it, and then with the social media, you get that, and you mentioned this, the false masculinity, right? You get the guy who rents the Lamborghini for the day and takes pictures in front of it, or the jet for the day and takes pictures in front of it, or um, I don't, I don't know what else, but certainly not um, true to life. Again, it's that social media life that isn't really what being a man is about, right? It's about struggling, it's about leading, it's about protecting, it's about providing, it's about presiding, and we need to see more of that.
I think another positive, right? And it can also be a negative because you could have bad role models, but there's also plenty of good role models through social media, right? Guys like Ryan Mickler, guys like Jordan Peterson, and the list goes on, right? And without them, without social media, their message doesn't get out there to the world.
Yeah, podcasts like Manhood Understood. Because let's
Yeah,
not kid
yeah, I
ourselves.
don't.
Like we're using it, right? We're using social media right now, right? I mean, this is basically, um, we're part of it, and hopefully we're part of the solution, not part of the problem. That we're using it intentionally. We're using it to spread a good message, to spread a message to a needed message, and I do think again, it's up to you know fathers to show their young sons and other people, other men or young boys in their life how to use it properly, because it's part of our life. Social media is here, it's here to stay, it's not going anywhere, but we have to use it intentionally. So if we're using it to follow people like Ryan Mickler, to follow Jordan Peterson, watch podcasts like Manhood Understood or the Order of Man podcast or the Art of Manliness podcast, that's an intentional good use of it. If we're using it to waste time for silly things, then not so positive.
Yeah, I think that you keep bringing up all my points without before we get there, but that brings my last positive of it provides opportunities, right? Things like networking for jobs, businesses, or even personal brands, right? I was going to use our own podcast as an example of that, right? And without platforms and social media, right, we wouldn't be able to get on here and talk about the things that we find important.
For sure, for sure. And again, um, that's a positive, right? It's a positive that Think about the businesses that have expanded their reach because of the internet and social media. You know, a business that maybe and maybe you could say, some people might say this is a negative, but there's no more mom and pop businesses, because those mom and pop businesses that just serve the community, if they don't grow with society and social media, they unfortunately disappear. And you know, sometimes guys of my generation are nostalgic for those kind of things. I certainly am, right? The old corner store, or you know, certainly the you know, the sporting goods stores, where, you know, where there was just Dryer Sporting Goods store where I had my first job, and Mr. Dryer was there every day running the store, right? We don't have those things anymore, and because, you know, the big chain stores have put them out of business, and part of that is the internet and social media and the popularity of those stores and the reach of those stores, right? So I do think it does help in that sense. And you know, one of the things is employment opportunities, right? LinkedIn, the job searches, you know, you've expanded and your network by being on those things, and your ability to find a job by being on those things. So certainly a positive.
Yeah, and speaking of having to adapt, right? Think about all those guys who or gals who were personal trainers, or they own a gym, right? And then internet becomes the next big thing, and now they're online personal trainers, and they use social media to their benefit for positive.
Yeah. Yeah, but again, it's a catch-22. All of this is a catch-22, because now everybody can be a personal trainer, right? Now everybody can have an online business. So as the user, you have to be very intentional with vetting the people that you trust and put your trust in and give your money to online. There's so many out there in this day and age, and there's so much information overload, that I think that's probably a con to social media, right? It's again catch-22. There's two sides to every coin with this conversation we're having, because just a little bit ago we said there's this vast amount of knowledge out there for you. Well, and now I'm saying that it's information overload, but it's true. And if you're not intentional with it, the information overload and the scams and the people who maybe aren't the authority. And the problem with social media is we have people, you know, to use your example, personal trainers who may have never actually trained a person a day in their life.
Yeah, and to add on to what you're saying, right, with anybody can go on and do anything, right? Also, anybody can go on and portray what they want to portray, even though it's not reality, right? I think I was listening to this podcast about this. Some I don't even know his name, but he was just saying how he thought he was having a conversation late at night between a few individuals, right? People, friends, in confidentiality. And what he didn't know is somebody was recording him, right? And this is a person that didn't necessarily agree with him or like him. And now they take what he says, what he thinks is in confidentiality, and post it online to paint him in a negative picture. And you could think of 100 examples or millions of examples of when people maybe take just a small clip of what somebody's saying, and you could kind of manipulate it to sound better, or sorry, worse than it was. Or, you know, I think you can also take a clip and make it seem better than it is.
Yeah, for sure. We see it all the time, right? Where you don't get the backstory, you don't get the context of a comment, and that comment gets posted, and everybody thinks it's horrible until you hear the whole conversation and you get the context and you realize, oh, that's not what the person meant, right? So, you know, again, I think it boils down to being intentional with it and using it appropriately.
Yeah. You got any more positives or negatives?
Um, you know, one of the things that I wrote down, I have some notes here. It's a great platform for fundraising, right? We see that all the time, where somebody might get ill and they can't, um, their insurance won't cover their health costs. And so it's an opportunity for some fundraising. Uh, and this is the reality, right? It's an opportunity for guys like me and you to be creative and express who we are. Cause that's what we're doing here. Right. And, we talk about, uh, you know, people putting themselves on social media and portraying themselves as experts, like, I hope nobody thinks that's what we're doing here. We're just a father and son putting ideas out there for the world and giving our thoughts and opinions. But the reality is it is a positive to be able for us to be able to do this. Right. And you and I are growing closer because we're able to do this and we're gaining clarity in our relationship and where, for me, at least for me, what I could have done better. And maybe I'm sharing, you're learning some lessons that, when you someday have a son, you won't make some of the mistakes I made. You'll make your own mistakes, right? Because we all do, but, it's an opportunity for self-expression.
Yeah. Well, not to cut
Go,
you off, but
no, go ahead.
you know, I know you asked me this question in the first one. Maybe I was a little short answered, right? But I think the most important or the main reason, right, is to just come on here and talk as father and son, right? It's not right whether it ever even gets posted or not really doesn't matter. But what actually matters is one, the relationship that we already have, two, the relationship that's getting stronger and building, and just being able to come on here and for me talk to my father. I think that's really what's more important than anything else.
For sure. For sure. And I feel the same way. Listen, you've been, you've been trying to start a podcast for since when was the first one? What was the first podcast? Was it the Civil Air
Probably,
Patrol one?
yeah. I mean, what, sixth, seventh grade?
Yeah,
So
and it was the Civil Air Patrol one.
seven,
So you
seven,
know,
8 years ago, maybe.
yeah. So I think for me, it's what you just said. It's an opportunity for us to have some conversations and to get to know each other on another level, but it's also an opportunity for me to help you maybe fulfill something you've been trying to do for a long time, right? And I think um, every iteration of your podcast, whether it was, let me see, you had the Civil Air Patrol, you had Be Awesome Today, I think you had From My Barracks, was that what it was called?
Yeah, I did once call it Barracks Room Podcast. Yeah,
Barracks, but I think your goal was to just put positive vibes out in the world with all of those, right? And um, that's a great example of a positive use of the internet, social media. Um, so I hope we're putting those good vibes out into the world, and some people are getting some value from our thoughts and opinions and the discussions we have. And I think you had said it. I don't know if you said it on one of the podcasts, you said it in a private conversation, but it's our job maybe just to get people thinking about these things as opposed to, uh, we're certainly not experts in any of this stuff, right? We're just sharing our experiences. So if we're able to get people to start thinking about these, and like I said earlier, either changing their opinions or strengthening their opinions, then I think we're doing good.
yeah. I think, and one of the reasons I wanted to start that Barracks Room Podcast, and as well as this one, is that I knew that I was fortunate to have a plethora of role models and good men around me, and that not everybody does, and I could potentially have an opportunity to give somebody else that opportunity, whether it's one person or 100.
Yeah. And I think the world needs that, right? And I think the world needs young men and young boys, which is the purpose of this podcast. One of the purposes, it need mentors and guidance, and I think that's what we're missing in um, society today. Too many fatherless homes, whether that's literally fatherless because they left or they passed away, whatever the case may be, or they're just absentee fathers, right? They're the father that's at work all day and then comes home and sits in the chair and doesn't want to be bothered. Um, and maybe we reach some of those young men that need to hear this, and maybe we reach some of those fathers that need to hear this as well, and are motivated to get up off the couch and be better fathers and husbands.
Yeah, well, where do you think we go from here as far as social media? What are the steps some people can take?
Yeah, some responsible use maybe is kind of what you're thinking.
Yeah, I think my biggest thing would be using social media as a tool, right?
Yeah,
And
I think.
what I think about is consume less and create more, right? Less consuming, like you said, the overflow of information, and more creating, right? Another example would be us starting this podcast, right? Or setting time limits on how often you're going to use social media, right?
Right.
Maybe you do struggle with social media, and it's like anything else. I know growing up you always use the example of you can't go from not hitting the gym at all to hitting the gym every day, right? Start with two days a week, 3 days a week. I think it's the same mindset we can have here with social media. If you're one of those people that uses social media for 4, 5, 6 hours a day, right? It's a little it's obtainable, but it's unrealistic. You're going to burn yourself out if you try and completely wipe it out of your life cold turkey, right? So maybe if you use it 4 hours a day, let me try and cut off an hour each day this week, and then you could keep cutting down slowly to there. And you don't have to cut social media out completely from your life, but you could get it into a more healthy routine per se.
Yeah, it's about setting boundaries, right? I think um, setting boundaries and being intentional. Like you said, with the amount you're using it, one of the things that I like to tell people when we talk about social media and the internet is be intentional and tell yourself, hey, I'm gonna be online for 15 minutes during my lunch break, right? So I'm gonna check my Facebook page for 15 minutes of my 45-minute lunch break, and then be done with it. And that requires discipline and being intentional, but it's possible. So, and then another boundary I think that you can set around social media for sure is like unfollow and unlike and unfriend, whatever the case may be, the people who are just putting negative vibes out in the world, right? If there's somebody who's always just being negative and every time you look at one of their posts, it brings you down or upsets you or makes you feel bad, stop following that person, right? Unfollow them, unfriend them, whatever the case is. But like life in general, set boundaries. And then I think there's a good case for like a detox once in a while, right? Like, hey, I'm going to go away this weekend. I'm going to leave my phone home. I'm going to go off the grid, and I'm not going to be on social media. I'm not going to be checking Facebook and Instagram. So again, I think boundaries and then detox strategies are probably and being intentional are probably the best use of social media.
Yeah, I think a good example, not related to social media, but I think you can apply it to social media, right? Is I'm sure everybody out there knows what a Zin is. And there came a point where I was taking 3 tins of Zins, and there's 15 packs of Zins in each tin, right? And I was consuming 3 packs a week, right? So I don't. Okay, I'm not good at quick math, but doing a lot of Zins
It's
throughout the week, right?
it's 45, son. 3 times 15 is 45.
Learn something new every day, right? But anyway, a lot of Zins being consumed throughout the week, right? And so, all right, well, for the next X amount of time until I stop feeling the need to have a Zin in my mouth, I'm not going to Zin, right? And then I can go back to using a healthy amount of Zin, right? I think we could apply that to social media. You start to recognize that you're on social media too often, and maybe you put it away until it doesn't affect you anymore, have any effect on you, and then you could start using it in a more healthy manner.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's that old saying, everything in moderation, right? Including moderation. But I think once you realize whether it's social media, Zen, alcohol, food is negatively affecting your life, that's when it's time to wean yourself off of it, right? I think of it's very hard to cut anything cold turkey, right? So I think of like certain medications, they lower as they wean you off of it, they lower the dosage, right? I think to truly see cutting anything out cold turkey, I believe, or like to use the example you used of the gym, right? People who come in hard and fast and are like, I'm gonna start going to the gym. I'm gonna start eating right. I'm gonna start sleeping right. I'm gonna start, they have this whole long list of things they're gonna do. They come out hard and fast and then they fade away. Slow, gradual change is usually the best way to make lasting change in your life, bit by bit, 1% a day. So whether that's positive or negative, for the positive or for the negative, I think it's not a bad strategy. Like, some people can quit cold turkey. If you have that personality, that's great. But if quitting cold turkey is going to cause you to go back and go back hard, then maybe, yeah, you wean yourself off of it, right? You slowly and gradually stop using social media, and to the point where it's no longer a negative in your life.
What would you say to maybe somebody out there who wants to quit something negative in their life and they keep telling themselves like, I need to quit, I need to quit, or one, they're either overwhelmed or they recognize they need to quit, they don't know how, or they just don't know where to start.
Yeah, I think James Clear said it best in Atomic Habits, and I'm pretty sure that's where I read it. Replace it. The best way to get rid of a bad habit is replace it with a good habit. So, if you have this social media, pick up a book every time you have an urge to go on social media. Read a chapter in a book. Read 10 pages in a book. Um, Go for a walk. Whatever the case may be. Find a positive habit to replace the bad habit.
Find something to do, something to distract yourself from the urge to do whatever you shouldn't be
Yeah,
doing.
yeah,
So my next, where do we go from here, is reclaiming real brotherhood, right? Encouraging the men or the people that you meet online through social media to make the connection in person. I think a perfect example of that is what you did with your battle team, right? And I think another thing is that another example would be this podcast, right? We're coming on here, we're using the digital world to try and make an impact in the real world.
yeah. And I think, if it's up to you, me, whoever, the individual, to take the initiative, right? So I think sometimes if we meet people, if we're in an online group, we might be a little intimidated, for lack of a better term, to be the one to set up the meetup, right? And listen, maybe the fear is that nobody's going to show up or nobody else is going to want to do it. But if one person shows up, then that's the person you connect with, right? So be the one to take the initiative. Um, if you're in a on a Facebook group and you're like, I really would like to meet some of these people in person. I hope one of them sets up an in-person event. That's wrong thinking. The right thinking is, I'd really like to meet these people in person. I'm going to set up an online event and then put it out there and invite people. And are you taking a risk? Sure, but the answer is always no if you don't ask. Right. So take that risk. And if it doesn't work out, are you any worse off than you were before? So for example, hey, guys, I'm going to be at the Delaware Water Gap on Sunday, and I'm going to hike, the Appalachian Trail. Anybody want to join me? Some guys might say yes. And then come Sunday, nobody shows up. Okay, so you get out and get a hike in by yourself, right? What's the worst that could happen? So put yourself out there, right? Be the one to take the initiative, and set those in-person meetups up.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't do that out of fear of rejection or failure. And sometimes you just got to put yourself out there. And like you said, if worst comes to worst, it's a no, or nobody shows up, and it's not a big deal, right? Because I think I've come victim to this a little bit, is that thinking that something that you've done, right, other people are thinking or making a big deal out of it, right? Where in their mind, they're not thinking anything of it, right? Positive or negative, right? So why should you, in your mind, be thinking, oh, if nobody shows up, it's a negative thing?
Yeah, we often over exaggerate how much we think people are thinking about us, right? They're not. They're thinking about themselves, right? They're not thinking about, oh, Jay said this. They're thinking, oh, I said this, and was that did Jay think this when I said it, right? So I think we are very other, we're not self-conscious, we're very other people conscious, right? We're always worried about what other people are thinking of us, and they're usually not, at number one. And number two is we just need to be worry less about what people think of us. The people who really care about us, the people that we want in our lives, are going to be the people that love us despite our flaws, or maybe love us because of our flaws. But there's certainly, if there's somebody who doesn't love you because you're flawed, that's probably somebody you don't want in your life anyway, right? Because we're all flawed. We're all sinners. None of us are perfect. Um, and and the people I want in my life are the people that accept me for who I am.
Yeah, well, I think that ties perfectly into what we're talking about today, right? Of trying to get other people to like us, right? And we post on social media certain things to try and seem cool or come off as
Yeah.
being liked. And I think a lot of times people fall into that trap.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I think as men we need to learn to do is be more transparent, right? Um, with where we're failing, as opposed to, I'm guilty of this, right? Or was guilty of this. Maybe go back 10 years, and I thought I had to have it all figured out, and I had to present myself to the world as somebody who had all the answers, never struggled, and it caused more stress in my life, right? And when I decided that, hey, I am who I am, and I'm gonna share where I struggle, and be transparent, my growth 10x'd, because now I have men who are pouring into my life, and they're sharing their struggles, and me sharing my struggles empowers them to share their struggles, and now we're helping each other get through those struggles, where before, when I thought I had to have it all figured out and I presented this front to the world that I had it all figured out, I was lone wolfing it, and that just doesn't work, right? Wolves are pack animals. The lone wolf usually winds up dying.
Yeah. And I think when you have that transparency and you open up to people, you actually start to realize that you aren't alone. And there's actually a lot of people going through something similar to what you may be struggling with.
Yeah, there's always somebody going through something similar. I think we all have very similar experiences in life, different little twists and turns of our stories, but in the end, um, very, very similar struggles. And to your point, there's I've found that most times when I share a struggle, there's somebody who can relate, and will share a very similar struggle, or even better. And I try and do this is, I'll share a struggle, or somebody will share their struggle, and maybe I've gone through that and come out the other side of it, and I can share how I came out the other side and how I wound up winning. Because one of my kind of life philosophies is I win. And that doesn't mean I always take first place, right? I just had a guy in the Iron Council. I shared that philosophy. I win. Very simple philosophy. And the guy challenged me, well, what does that look like if you don't win? Are you going to, you're doing a marathon in a couple weeks. Are you going to win the marathon? And that's not what I mean by I win. It means that, despite what happens in that marathon, one of my goals for that marathon is a sub 4 hour marathon. I'm not sure I put the training in or not. Well, time will tell, right? I'll know that day. But regardless of whether I hit that goal or not, I'm going to show up the next day in my life strong. And that's what I mean by I win. Um, so that's a little tangent. I'm not even sure how I got off on that tangent, but
Yeah. Well, I think
good.
one of the things I want to take away from what you said was setting goals. Because if we don't set goals, we're kind of just out here meandering around. We're walking around without any purpose. So, you could go into the marathon and have no purpose into the marathon, and you'll run the marathon and you'll get it done. But having that goal of running a sub 4, it gives you that clear vision in your mind of what you want to accomplish.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head right with that, what you just said, vision, right? We all have to have a vision for our lives. And I would encourage everybody out there who's listening, if you don't have a vision on paper of what you want your life to look like, a clear and compelling vision, right? And not just and make sure it covers every area of your life, but it should be on paper, right? And then you can, and we this is what we do in the Iron Council, right? We have every new member creates a vision for their life, and then we have what we call the battle plan, the 90-day battle plan. We reverse engineer um, our objectives. We pick goals, we call them objectives that'll get us closer to our vision, and then we pick a daily tactic, and then we have checkpoints along the way. And just a brief what battle planning is, but the point is we all have visions and purpose for our lives, and that's what directs our daily actions. So to your point, if you don't know where you're going, then any road will take you there. Um, but you have to know where you're going so that you can take the right roads, and you have to have a vision for your life so that you can take the daily actions that will get you closer to that vision.
Yeah. Just to get us back to what we're talking about with social media. I think another big thing, and I think you'll be able to hit on this better than I can, is that fathers play a big role in teaching their sons healthy boundaries for social media. If you kind of want to take that one over and maybe share some insight on how young fathers who maybe have young kids, can set their kids up for success through
Yeah,
specifically social media.
I would just say be active in their use of it, right? Monitor it, talk to them about it, good communication, help them set boundaries, right? They might not have the wherewithal, that depending on how old they are in their lives, they might not have the wherewithal to know what a good boundary is, and have make sure that what they're using, the social media they're using, is age appropriate. I think it just boils down to being involved and being intentional, and taking an interest in what they're doing, right? I think too many of us just hand them the iPad, hand them the our smartphones to keep them out of our hair, and that's not parenting, right? That's not leading, that's not presiding, certainly not protecting them from the dangers of social media. So I think just being active, being involved, and having conversations about what healthy boundaries are, and setting limitations, and setting the example too, right? I think one of the things that all too often we see from parents and fathers is we're real good at telling the kids what they should do, but we're not real good at maybe showing them what they should do always, right? So we got to make sure that we're walking the walk. So if you're a parent that is on your phone all day long, and first thing you do in the morning is pick up your phone, the last thing you do at night is you scroll through your phone, and you're telling your kid that they have to have boundaries and use social media intentionally, it's going to fall short, because your actions speak louder than your words, and kids don't always hear what you say, but they always see what you do.
Yeah, it's like the old "do as I say, not as I do."
Yeah, that's not leadership, right?
Yeah. Is there any other things that you want to hit on?
No, I think we hit on it. I think the bottom line is social media is not good or bad. It's a tool, and like any tool, how you choose to use it makes it good or bad. I think we live in a society where you're not going to get around using social media on some level. So make sure you're intentional with it, and as far as the fathers out there, make sure your sons and daughters are you're setting the example, and you're talking to them about setting boundaries and being intentional.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that we hit on today is that it can either be a positive or a negative, and it's on us as the individual person to decide what effect we want social media to have on us.
For sure.
Any last words?
No, always good to see you, son.
Yeah. For those of you listening, I just want to say thank you for all your support thus far. One thing I would ask though is that whether you're on Spotify or YouTube, subscribe, follow. And if you're on Instagram, TikTok, all the other platforms that we're on, and you're watching our short clips, I ask you to go over to YouTube and Spotify and watch the full episode because you're missing out on some good stuff. Other than that, just want to say thank you. All right. See you next
Till
week,
next
guys.
week.